Seconds. Webinar is now streaming. So welcome, Lucy, to a conversation I'm really excited to be having with you here today. So ladies in our GIFEW women community, I'm introducing you to Lucy Klestincova. Can I say it that way for us native English speakers? So Lucy is currently working at the European Commission, and earlier, well, late last year, really, her soul told her to run for European Parliament. And watching her, being close to her through every step of her journey really inspired me. Seeing this woman in action, taking action to fulfill on what's important to her and what her soul's journey and her soul's calling tells her to do, has just been an awesome experience for me, which is why selfishly I'm really excited to share her story with you here today so that you can get the inspiration and wisdom from her knowledge of what she's experienced through this process. So Lucy, I'd love to start with, what was the moment when your soul called you, to run, and what did it say, and why did you go, all right, game on, soul, I'll play this game with you?
Well, hello everybody. Very happy to be here with you. Excited to have an opportunity to share a little bit about my journey. It was pretty much last year when I woke up one day, and because of a series of circumstances related to the fact that I've been working on Brexit these past 2 years and wondering what is it that we've done wrong and how we can communicate differently, in combination with the development in my country, Slovakia, where really bad tragedy happened last year and a journalist was murdered and his fiancée for investigation of crime that they were doing in Slovakia. And in combination with very low turnout rates in the elections in Slovakia, because people simply don't understand what EU is about and what is their benefits and how they can play a role in the elections. It got me thinking, what is my responsibility in all of this? Because in my heart and in my profession, I'm a European policymaker. As you said, I work in the European Commission, one of the European institutions. And ultimately, it got me thinking, what's the point being the super innovative policymaker if then in the European Parliament, we don't have the quality representation that we wish for, and we are not going to have the partners that we need to get our policies and ideas through the legislative system. So I remember having this conversation with Tinka, one of our GIFEW mentors, when I'm thinking about shadowing one of the MEP candidates, like the candidates who are running to become members of the European Parliament, and I could help them do a better job in my country and maybe learn a little bit. And she's like, what? Why would you think of shadowing someone? Just show up and go to the field and be the voice that you wanted to be for so long, and the job doesn't allow you to do that. So it was really from one day to another when it somehow clicked, and I realized that probably this is one of the opportunities, or the opportunity that I've been preparing for all these years, including GIFEW journey, where probably now's the time for me to show up and stand for what is it that I've been committed to all my life and my studies and my career, and maybe bring a little bit of this passion and commitment and a bit of professionalism to the debate in my country. So it was very intuitive and quick decision, but I think it was an end of something that was maturing for a long time.
Okay, so it kind of sounds like you're actually just responding to, well, oh yeah, of course I would run. Actually, it's actually just a natural soul expression. Of course I would run because, I stand for Slovakia, I stand for Europe, and from my position within the European Commission, I can see, what's not working, and I want to be part of that solution. So was there any resistance? Was there any resistance for you, or was it really just as easy as okay, it's natural, let's just do it?
Because me, how much I'm in my head, and I can't really get my head around the fact that on the one hand, there was no resistance, as you said, ultimately I knew that this is the place for me, that's where I'm supposed to be. I'm not supposed to be in the European Commission now, this coming year, working on the policies for the future. I'm supposed to be in my country and be the voice and contribute to the conversation. At the same time, I had no clue how I was going to go about it. I've never been involved in youth politics. I've never run a campaign in my life. I wouldn't have the money, the platform to run on, like not knowing where to start from. But it wasn't that kind of paralyzing insecurity. It was more, the first time, I guess, ever when I kind of surrendered to the calling, when I felt that this is it. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna go about it, but it's supposed to be happening, and I guess I'm gonna figure it out along the way. And I find it really beautiful because I haven't had too many occasions of this in my life. So I'm really grateful for whatever it was that made this possible, that in that moment I was willing to listen to this and pluck up the courage to follow this calling without really having it all figured out up front. I'm really grateful for that, because if not, that we wouldn't be having this conversation now.
And what, what did you, so what was the actual journey like? Because I was watching you, all your Facebook, I was watching it all on the internet. So I was just really excited to watch it all along the way. But like for you, what were the elements of campaigning that felt really aligned with your soul? Like, I'm really in flow, this is my soul's purpose, and what were the moments where you were like, oh, this isn't so fun?
So the campaign is a little bit like building a startup where you become the product. You're supposed to turn yourself into a product that thousands of people are going to buy on a certain date. And you have to put together the structure, the team, get the money, build the brand, build the campaign, build the agenda, the online channels, wherever you want to be present, figure it out what and when you're going to be doing, while at the same time knowing that this is constant improvisation, and whatever we've agreed on yesterday evening might no longer be valid today because the things are moving under ourselves and there's so much uncertainty in the process. So the campaigning is like daily work on yourself, on the team, on your messaging, on when you're going to go to which part of the country, what you're going to post, when, playing with the messages, trying to figure out how to best find a midway between who you want to be in the campaign, what kind of energy and messages and identity you want to bring, while on the other hand, the strategists are giving you some advice which you have to consider in one way or another, and then reconciling it also with your professional identity, which in my case is very strong. So it's learning by doing and testing and listening to whatever is the feedback that you're hearing from outside. And so this experimentation and this playing was the part that I enjoyed most, where I could be out there, either online or in the real space in Slovakia, in the regions, talking to people about Europe and really authentically sharing what's my journey, why have I dedicated my life to the EU, why do I believe that this makes sense, being a cheerleader for my colleagues, sharing what is it that Europe brings to us in everyday context, while knowing that people understand very little about it. So it also involved learning, speaking a new language, simplifying massively and looking for concrete examples, not to get too rotating around the policy language and all that. So this is what I enjoyed most, like being out there and being the voice for Europe in context and in sectors and in places where normally in our normal life we wouldn't get to. It was also the work with my team, the ladies that were supporting me on everyday basis, and we were really creating beautiful stuff together. Also, the work online was very interesting. It was, despite what we were often told in our GIFEW programs, build your online identity. I never did that because obviously as the policymaker, I don't need it. And then it was like a slap in my face when last year I'm like, oops, it might be a problem that I don't even have Instagram on my phone. So it was like really daily work, trying to figure out who do you want to be, what part of your life do you want to show, also like setting the boundaries, how far you want to go, what kind of language you're going to be using, etc. So this was like the super creative part that I was very, very much enjoying, which was very difficult, but I was enjoying it. And then the difficult part was the politics, I have to admit. The fact that it's not always about the authentic stand for Europe, but there's other motivations, why people go into the game. They use different kind of practices. It's also a bit of a clash of civilizations, because I've been out of Slovakia for several years and working in a very professional work context. So also reconciling and getting used to different work practices while knowing that you are constantly running out of time and losing a week if somebody promises something and doesn't deliver is like very, very costly for the campaign. So this is the stuff that was a bit painful, yeah. I have to admit.
And I'd love to ask you more of the shadow side of running for office. And I'm going to ask you a bit of a dual question now, which is, because I know you were up against some very, very strong viewpoints, you know, like neo-Nazis turning up to, you know, events and things, and, you know, dealing with that real, what I would call a politics of hatred. You know, what was that like for you? And also the flip side of my question is, what do you think of Marianne Williamson's politics of love and, you know, the duality in what's coming out at this point in time in our global or Western democracies?
This was one of the interesting things in the campaign, observing my reactions to these situations, because on the one hand there is a lot of hatred that I was victim of on my own online channel. So like on my Facebook page, people hating who I was being, how I was showing up, how I talk, how I look. Every single statement that I would post, couple of seconds afterwards there would be hate speech on my Facebook posts. So there's a lot of personal mastery that is required, I guess, to be able to process this and not let it throw you out of your game or your flow, so that you can show up as much energized as you or in your stand that you want to bring into the game outside for the people. And what was interesting for me is that the online hate wasn't as painful for me, because I didn't, like, I guess thanks to all the work that we're doing here, it wasn't as painful because I could process it in a way that was required for the campaign. While on the other hand, meeting the neo-Nazis out there and meeting the narrative and talking to the people who would be willing to put on the agenda the fact that we don't necessarily need to be in the EU, that we don't need this, that it's not working. This is what I was like really taking personally, because that was one of the biggest discoveries for me, how much of a physical reaction I had to attacks on the EU instead of the attacks on myself. I find it a bit surprising because I wasn't expecting that. But when I was in the encounters with the extremists, for instance, there was like really this new, authentic, a bit more aggressive identity of myself showing up, where I'm like, how do you dare even question this? Because the life that we have it thanks to the work that was done by the previous generations, all the people who are fighting for the collapse of socialism and the negotiations and the Eastern enlargement after super difficult period that Slovakia went through in the 90s. So all that we have is the fruits of the work of decades of people before us. And I think that we now have this obligation to show up and protect it and work to make it even better for the generations that are going to come after us. And if somebody shows up questioning this without having an alternative, without having a clue about how difficult it is to come to a compromise in a Europe of 28 countries, I'm like, how do you dare? So this is the difficult, but also not so difficult stuff, because when it's like deep down in you, it's like when somebody is attacking your family, you don't question whether you're going to protect them. So it was a bit that I was just, being myself.
Yeah, and it really resonates a lot with me as an American-born, British naturalized subject. I voted in the election that produced Donald Trump. I voted in the referendum that produced Brexit. And you know, hearing your genuine love for Europe and like relating to Europe as if it's your baby, as if it's your family, and like something to protect, something to grow, something to nurture, is just, you know, I just want to say thank you. Like, thank you on behalf of people who like really love Europe, really love being part of a family that, you know, that's bigger than their own nuclear, you know, blood family. Because I get like that too. You know, I consider America, Britain, Europe, you know, I consider it all my family. And I feel that fierce, like, you know, wanting to defend it as you have. And just two more questions for you, Lucy. So would love to know if you could rewind 1 year ago and tell your 1 year ago self, like give your some 1 year ago self advice about running. Like, what are 2 or 3 things that you would have said to your 1 year ago self?
Like, real, as I was saying, surrender and trust that it's gonna be good, that it's gonna be the mind-blowing experience of your life, disregarding of how it's going to end up, because that's the mindset in which I am now. Like, I'm so grateful that I've been through this. And although, well, we forgot to say that I wasn't elected. So that's maybe one of the questions that some people are asking themselves. I wasn't elected, but I had a beautiful result, and I'm really proud of what I was able to create in this very short time. So that's what I would tell to myself, or whoever are the other people possibly considering this. If you feel it's your calling, just go for it and trust that you're going to figure it out along the way somehow, and the right people are going to come into your world to help you make it happen. Pick your battles. There was a lot of energy that I used on trying to influence stuff that I couldn't, and that's also because of my wiring that I have from like very structured and professional environment here, where through like agreements and discussions you can improve stuff, whereas in a very agile project like a campaign, it's really constant improvisation and faking it till you make it. So kind of take the foot off the you know, the control pedal a little bit. And also, but I don't know to which degree this can be generalized, or if it's a lesson which is defined by my own personality. The fact that I have the identity of European expert really on my forehead. People were not very interested in listening or discussing European substance or going deep into the policies. We only had conversations about myself, my stand in life, my journey. Why does this make sense for me? Why do I believe in Europe, and what is it that I would like to be working on? So a learning for me would be less work on the content and spend more time outside, because I spend a lot of time on production of my election program, drafting dozens of blogs and articles which never saw the light of the day because the discussion never advanced to that degree of substantial debate where we would be like discussing concrete policy questions. So again, coming from my space of an EU policy making professional, I wanted to be ready and have my content ready. And I spent a lot of energy on that last year. And I think the energy could have been used more on like building my visibility and my brand and being out there much more. So a big, you know, the magic that's happening that determines the success is about knowing the proportions where you're going to invest your energy. And so I guess that's a bit personalized where the ratio goes for each of the candidates. But for me, that was one of the biggest struggles that I had. How do you, when you only have 24 hours a day, and even if I can work 24/7, like how do you strike the balance if it's you who wants to be out there and also creating the content and mobilizing the team and fundraising, etc. How do you strike that balance and where you invest the energy?
Wonderful. So one last question, and just like a really, really big thank you for running, because regardless of the results, you know, we need women running, and it takes a lot more women running to actually get into office. So it really, this is a call to action for all the women out there who have considered maybe running for office or who are inspired, like people like Lucy, because Lucy, I've got a few role models. So you're my European and closest role model. And in the US, My role models are Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in Congress, and Marianne Williamson, who's running for president. But they're my faraway role models. You're like my real, you're like my real relationship role model. So like, thank you for being a role model for women everywhere. And what's next? What's next for you?
We shall see. I think I have now this beautiful summer period that I gave to myself as a me time, self-reflection, hygiene gift. So after because it was a very, very tiring and exhausting and very demanding period that I've been through during the campaign. So now in June, I got back to Brussels, back to my job. And since it's a bit of a down season also in the institutions, because we're now waiting for the new bosses, new commissioners to come in, and there's going to be a very big transformation ongoing in Brussels. So this summer is a bit of a quieter period here, and so I'm grateful for that, because it's a beautiful reflection time for me, and I'm working a lot with the GIFEW community, with Bea, reflecting on how can I best integrate that experience and then bring it to another level. Who is it that I'm going to be as my next step, career-wise and personality-wise? How can I continue being the voice for Europe? Because it's a bit like stepping outside of the matrix, that once you show up, it's difficult to go back into the shell and stop talking. So we're also playing with several ideas on how can I continue really shining light a little bit on who are the people here in the institutions, all the beautiful souls who are all of them trying to do excellent work for all of us as European citizens, and the world doesn't know enough of them or doesn't appreciate them enough. So I'm looking into all kinds of ideas, and hopefully after summer I'll be able to share with the community a little bit more. So stay tuned, follow my Facebook and Instagram, and continue liking. And I'm really grateful for your support, because if the community wasn't here, I wouldn't have been ready to go for this, and I wouldn't have been able to listen to the message to go for this, and I wouldn't have had the strength to float through the campaign with the flow and the energy that I hopefully brought to the campaign. I'll never forget the GIFEW weekend. We had 2 weeks before the elections. I'm sure you still remember, but it was like, imagine what is like 2 weeks, it's like 10 days before the elections, when I was there with all the women in Bratislava, and I was like, my head was all over the place, making myself guilty at the same time for not campaigning outside, but at the same time grateful for this re-energizing opportunity and the energy to reconnect with the feminine that we managed to concentrate in Bratislava. So there was like a beautiful reminder for myself in the ultimate finish line of this marathon, reminder of who I wanted to be and was the energy that I wanted to bring to the campaign. So yeah, it was, it feels now really long time ago, but it was a beautiful experience, and I'm curious what is the next thing that's waiting for me.
Yeah, well, I will post your links in the chat so that women can follow you on Facebook and Instagram, because I know we're all anxious to hear what your next steps are going to be, so that we can continue to support you and be inspired by you. So I'll share those links below, and like when you're ready to share more, I'd love to have you back on another Facebook Live so we can get the next installment of the Lucy European adventures in politics.
Yes. And so if there's anyone out there who wants to hear more, like really playing with these ideas, I mean, I'm for sure I'm not the only one, and we see more and more people like yourself really activating themselves and becoming much more active citizens also in the political domain. So if I can be helpful to anyone of the GIFEW women, I'm more than welcome to share my experience or advice.
Wonderful. I'm sure some women will take you up on that. So thank you very much, Lucy, and thank you everyone for watching. And if you're watching this as a recording, please please comment and ask Lucy questions. She'll keep looking at this so she can answer anything for you directly on the post. And thanks again.
Take care. Have a beautiful rest of the week, everyone. Love you.
Bye.